In Chapter 7, we are going to talk about contract verbs. What is a contract verb? A contract verb is a verb whose stem ends in the short vowel alpha, epsilon, or omicron. So, for example, we have an illustration here. Agapao means I love. Poieo means I do. Plerao means I fulfill. These are all contract verbs because the last letter of their stem, and we get that by cutting the omega off, the last letter of their stem is an alpha, epsilon, or omicron. These are contract verbs. And when these stems combine with our present and imperfect endings, right? We've learned present and imperfect endings, o, ace, a, or on, s. And when these come in and they combine with those contract vowels, there's a crash, and letters drop out and letters combine. They contract. Just like when we have do not in English, it contracts to don't. You can see how letters have dropped out, letters have combined. It's shorter now. And so this particular class of verbs needs our attention, not because we have new endings. We do not have new endings. We have the same endings that we learned for the present and imperfect. But what concerns us is the way that these verb stems are now crashing with our regular endings. Let's look at one example of this with the verb poieo, right? Poieo means I do or I make. And when we memorize poieo, we're memorizing an artificial stem. All of the lexical forms of contract verbs are in some sense artificial. You're memorizing it with a piece of glass almost stuck down here between the contract vowel and the ending, and it keeps them from combining. Because in the real world, pop, right? They're going to combine. So it's almost like we've pried them apart and stuck a piece of glass in there. So we're memorizing the uncombined form. So when we do that, we're alerting ourselves. We're like, aha, this is a contract verb. Aha. And aha, I expect it to change in the present and imperfect tense. I expect vowels to combine. Now, someone's noticed I'm especially emphasizing in present and imperfect, right? Because when we get to the aorist in the future, right, there's a sigma that keeps those vowels apart, or with the aorist in the future, right, there's a sigma that keeps those vowels apart, and with the perfect, there's a kappa. So in the aorist, future, and perfect tenses, we have kind of a buffer that keeps the vowels from combining in as confusing and unrecognizable ways as we have sometimes in the present and the imperfect. Now, if we look here, even if you didn't have this chapter, you'd be able to look at this, poio, poies, poie, poiumen, poieta, poiusen. You'd be able to recognize those. You might be a little bit frustrated. You might be like, hey, I don't know why that's spelled slightly differently, but I'm getting used to this in Greek. I don't know why it's an amen, why it's not an amen. I don't know why it's not an eta. It's an and it's an eta. It's a little bit different. But I can recognize that's second person plural and that's first person plural. But and so this is, obviously I chose the easiest one first, right? Because we could recognize this, but in some of the other ones it's a little bit trickier. And I also want you to note here, especially for present tense contract verbs, whenever there's a vowel combination, it's marked by that circumflex, right? Circumflex. And I tell students in class, I'll have one student shake hands with me, and then I'll take the hand and I'll hold it up kind of like this, and it looks like my hand and his hand, it looks like a circumflex, doesn't it? And I say, hey, when you see that circumflex over the end, that's another marker, many times, of vowel combination, and that you're dealing with a contract verb. Let these little things help you like that. So when it comes to contract verbs, right, there's a lot of possible combinations. And if you look at this chart, it can really look overwhelming. This is a chart from the book. And we're comparing, right, I'm highlighting in yellow now the form of luo in the present, right? This is the present here, the present active and the present middle passive. We see all these regular forms. And then we're comparing that with the epsilon contract, the alpha contract, the omicron contract, and then for the middle passive, the epsilon contract, the alpha contract, the omicron contract. And you look at that and you're like, whoa, 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 so much, so many forms. But really, all those different combinations can be explained by 7 rules, right? 5 rules of one vowel combining with another vowel, and then 2 rules with diphthongs. Remember, a diphthong is where you have 2 vowels that make one sound. So where you have a contract vowel combining with a diphthong. So we have two rules of a singular contract vowel, right, because that's what we have. Singular contract vowel combining with a diphthong, or 5 rules of a single vowel combining with another vowel. Total of 7 rules. These are summarized from Bill Mounce's Beginning Grammar. He very nicely provides these 7 rules that really cover all possible combinations. And so we're going to go through those and give him thanks and credit for nicely helping us out here. Now I am going to erase all this this extraneous writing here that's going to distract us because I was going through an initial taping of that and I didn't like the way it sounded. And I said, no, I'm going to throw all that out and do it again because I want it to be better, because I don't want you to be confused about contract verbs. The first time I taught contract verbs 20 years ago, I came up with this elaborate memory system using Star Wars. And when I look back at it, I think to myself, that is so confusing. I can't understand it myself. So hopefully, using these rules, again, look, 5 rules of basic where we have one vowel combined with another vowel, singular vowel combined with singular vowel, right? And the first vowel that we're looking at is always that last vowel of the verb stem, the contract vowel. And then the next vowel, that's the beginning of the personal ending, right? So it'd be like if you have play ra-o, right, play ra-o, so we erase the omega, that's our stem, and then we have that coming in with the ending amen, right? So you can see this is the first vowel that we're looking at here in this chart, right? So the first vowel is always going to be the contract vowel. The first vowel that we're looking at is always the contract vowel, that last letter of the verb stem. And then the second part of the equation that I'm highlighting now in blue, the second part of the equation is always the beginning of that personal ending, right? We realize it's really the connecting vowel and the personal ending, but we're calling it the personal ending, and we see how those combine. All right, so these rules explain all that. We're going to go through the rules, and then we're going to try them out to see how well they work in actually writing out a few of the paradigms. So here, epsilon plus omicron, omicron plus epsilon, and omicron plus omicron equals oo. That's really hard to keep in your head because it's kind of abstract. So we have little memory devices to help with that. So we're going to think about this omicron, right? We're going to think about the omicron as like one of these bubble costumes. Maybe you've seen at youth events. And you imagine like 2 bubble people running into each other, and then they fall back, and oh, bones are cracking, and there's just boom on the hard ground, and you're like, ooh. At least I, as an older guy now, I'm like, ooh, that looks so painful, right? And so when we look at that rule, omicron plus omicron equals ooh. This epsilon, we're going to say, represents a dinosaur costume, right? So imagine the guy with his head down, right? Here's all his teeth, his head down, and he has his 2 little dinosaur hands out here flying, right? It's kind of like an epsilon, right? It's kind of like an epsilon. So there's, again, the little T-Rex hands, the little T-Rex head there in the center. So you imagine him barreling into the bubble guy, and bam, they both fall down, and you're like, ooh. Or perhaps a bubble guy is running this way, and a dinosaur guy is running this way, and they hit, and it's ooh. So, right, dinosaur plus bubble, bubble plus dinosaur, bubble plus bubble, right, all those together, all those possible combinations are ooh. Ooh, I don't know if that'll help you or not, but we're giving it a try. Epsilon plus epsilon equals epsilon iota. We say you have one egghead, you add another egghead, that equals egghead intelligence. You can imagine Tweedledee and Tweedledum, picture them in your mind, make some sort of memorable conversation associations to remember one egghead plus another egghead equals egghead intelligence. Okay, for the next thing, I wish I were here. I wish you were in my presence and I could do this. In class, what I do is I sort of imagine that I'm flexing, right? And I put my arms down like this, like as a circle in front of me, right? And so that looks like an omicron. And then I hold my arms up like this, and with my huge biceps, of course, right? That looks like an omega, doesn't it? So it's looked like an omicron, and looks like an omega. I'm like, these are strong vowels. I'm in the weight room. Pretty much any combination of omicron or omega is going to be an omega. The flex rule, strong rule, okay? We'll apply these in a moment. This may seem really strange right now, but I think these things will help you, okay? I think these things will help you. Get an A in elementary school, I can predict you're going to get an A the rest of your life. That's how things normally work. Perfectionists don't change very much, right? Now, omicron plus epsilon iota equals OI. And we have a little device for that. You may know this show from the 1970s. We have all these teenage kids on the show. Right? On the show. 8 is enough, right? Omicron A. On the show. 8 is enough. Oily kids. Oi, right? On the show. 8 is enough. Oily kids. Oi. Omicron plus epsilon iota equals OI. Okay, we also have two rules about diphthongs. Remember, a diphthong is where you have two vowels together that are pronounced as one sound, right? And so what we're talking about here is where you have the contract vowel, right? The contract vowel is always singular. Contract vowel is always epsilon, alpha, or omicron, right? It's the last letter of the contract vowel stem, and then it's come crashing in. It either comes crashing into a singular vowel or to a diphthong. So what happens if it's a diphthong? How do we combine those? Well, there are two diphthong rules, right? Two diphthong rules. If the contract vowel and the first vowel of the diphthong are the same, they simplify. That is, one of the double letters drops out. So again, just to illustrate this very clearly, here's our contract vowel epsilon. It's coming into the diphthong A. Oh, the contract vowel and the first letter of the diphthong are the same, so one of them drops out, so we have A. Oh, here, the contract vowel and the first vowel of the diphthong are the same, so one of them drops out. We have oo. That's diphthong rule number 1. What is diphthong rule number 2? Well, if the contract vowel and the first vowel of the diphthong are different, they contract. So again, I'm highlighting in yellow. These are our contract vowels. And then, oh, well, that's different from the first one of the diphthong. So we have epsilon plus oo. So this vowel and this vowel are different. So what happens? They contract. So this is now we apply the earlier rules. We have a dinosaur charging into a bubble. Ooh. What happens with what's left here? Well, if the second vowel of the diphthong is a iota, it subscripts. That's not a iota. If it's a upsilon, it drops off. So we're left with oo. So let's look at the second example of this pattern down here. Right, so we have the contract vowel alpha. It's coming into the diphthong A. Oh, alpha and epsilon, those are different, so they contract. Remember, we apply our earlier rules. Get an A in elementary school, you get an A your whole life. Those combine to be alpha. If there's a iota and it can subscript, it does. You're like, well, how do I know if it can subscript? Iota subscripts under alpha, iota subscripts under eta, iota subscripts under omega. It can always hop under those three long vowels, okay? All right, so let's play around with this a little bit, right? So let's see how well this works. Let's do it with poieo first, right? And then if we have time, we'll do it with agapao and then pleirao. And you'll see how those rules, those 7 rules, really work amazingly well to talk about these different combinations. So here's our contract verb poieo. It's an epsilon contract verb, right? And we're memorizing that artificial stem so that we'll know that what's really combining in all these forms is poie, 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 and poie, right? There we go, poie. We have 6 forms, right? We have first, second, third person singular, first, second, third person plural. And then we just have our regular endings. O, ace, a, right? Just our regular endings. No tricks there. But what happens is they contract. That's why it's called contract verbs, right? And we have to see how the rules we've reviewed cover that. Okay, let's look at it. So remember, all the way through here, our contract vowel is this epsilon, right? That's the first part of the equation. So epsilon plus omega, what is that? Well, this is the flex rule, right? Imagine flexing there, biceps up in the air, arms up in the air. Pretty much any combination of omicron or omega with anything else is going to be omega, because it's a very strong, the omicron and omega are strong vowels. Notice again in the present how that circumflex is always marking the combination too. So the actual form as it occurs in text would be poieo, I am doing. The next example here, we have a diphthong, and the contract vowel and the first vowel of the diphthong are the same, so one of them drops out. So we end up with poiace, right? The third one here, we have the contract vowel and the first vowel of the diphthong are the same, so one of them drops out. So we end up with poye, right? Poyo, poyes, poye. I am doing, you are doing, he is doing. For the first person plural, we have epsilon plus omicron. It's like there we have like a we have the little dinosaur, the little T-Rex with his arms out, head down, running into the bubble, and then they fall down. You're like, ooh, right? Ooh, that hurts. Poyumen, we are doing. Here we have an epsilon plus epsilon. What's that going to be? Well, you have one egghead, you had another egghead, you get egghead intelligence, right? Poyeta, poyeta. Here, the contract vowel and the first vowel of the diphthong are different, so they combine, right? And so that's the dinosaur and the bubble. They combine to be ooh, and then the other upsilon drops off. So we end up with poyusen. Now, you're not going to be asked to, to combine a bunch of these. You're going to have to recognize these as they occur in the New Testament. But I'm doing this to illustrate to you how these combinations happen. It'll make you feel, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Even, I understand that a little better. It makes me feel a little more comfortable with it. So, poyo, I am doing. Poyes, you are doing. Poye, he is doing. Poyumen, we are doing. Poyeta, you guys are doing. Poyusen, they are doing. Right? That's the forms that we have right up here. Now, let's take a look at an alpha contract and how they combine. Can we do that? Okay, let's do that with agapao. You can't be mad about conjugating the verb meaning I love, right? Wouldn't that be terrible if you're upset about that? It wouldn't be very loving, would it? So here we have agapa, right? It's agapao, right? But we cut the omega off to get our stem, agapa. And we're going to have 6 forms, just like we had up above, singular and plural of the verb. Agapa, agapa, agapa. A lot of love going around here. Agapa, agapa, agapa. Makes you want to go out and buy flowers and give them to someone, doesn't it? Then we have our regular endings, o, ace, a. We could do this with the imperfect. We could do this middle passive endings, but we're just going to illustrate it with the present active. O, ace, a, amen, eta, usen. These are going to be a little bit harder to recognize than the epsilon contract, right? We're kind of working in level of difficulty here. I think the alpha is sort of in the middle. So this is an alpha contract verb. So there's our connecting vowel, our contract vowel that's right there that then combines with the endings. Okay? So here we have alpha plus omega. What rule is that going to be? That's the flex rule, right? Omega and omicron, very strong vowels. Flexing. Pretty much any combination of any vowel plus omicron or omega, except one's specifically specified otherwise, is going to be omega. Agapo, right? Agapo means I love. Agapo, I love. Right? Agapo se means I love you. So say that to someone special today if you want. Agapo se. Se is the accusative, a singular you. So you say that, go say that to your spouse if you want. Agapo se, I love you. Okay, here, this next one, we have the alpha contract plus a diphthong, right? And we see the first vowel of the diphthong and the contract vowel are different, so they're going to combine. And then which rule applies there? Oh, yeah, you get an A in elementary school, you get an A your whole life. So that's going to be agapa, right? Those will combine to be alpha. And there's a iota left here. It's hard to see because it's written over. But that iota will then subscript. So we end up, the second person singular form is agapas. And if you think about it, your regular ending is ace. And so you still have that iota and the sigma, although the iota is popped underneath the vowel, right? So you still have 2 of your letters from the original. But students struggle with this one because they think it looks like a noun almost, right? So what is that? Is that a noun? I don't know what that is. We have to remember with contract verbs, the letters combine and sometimes they're a little bit harder to recognize. So that's why we have a chapter on this. So agapas means you love or you are loving. Agapas. The next form here, we have an alpha contract vowel plus a diphthong. The first vowel of the diphthong is different. So again, these combine. Alpha plus epsilon equals alpha, and then the iota subscripts. So it's going to be agapa, right? And again, students think that looks like a dative singular noun, and they struggle with that. So I love, you love, he loves, or I am loving, you are loving, he is loving, right? That is these are the combined forms. So again, you're learning. You're like, okay, I got to be on my guard with contract verbs because they're going to combine sometimes in weird ways, and endings are going to end up looking maybe even like something I think looks a little bit like a noun. So I'm going to be alert to this and be paying attention. Okay, for the first person plural, we have an alpha contract vowel plus the omicron there in the ending. What rule do you think is going to come into play there, right? The flex rule, right? That's a strong vowel. Huh, right? Flexing. I'm holding my arms in front of me like a circle, putting my fists together. Pretty much any combination of omicron or omega with anything else is going to be omega, unless it's one of the other rules that's specified. So this is agapomen, right? Agapomen. You don't believe me, do you? Right now. Oh, I kept forgetting to write my circumflex there over the combined vowels. So let's look up. You're like, are you just making this stuff up? I'm not. Look at there. There it is right there. Agapomen, right? And these are the forms that we've done so far, right? There we go, right? These rules actually do explain how these forms combine, or they help you learn to recognize them, okay? So here we have an alpha plus an epsilon. You get an A in elementary school. You get an A your whole life. So that ends up agapata, right? Again, we're noting how that circumflex is always, in the present at least, noting where the vowels have combined. Finally, we have the alpha contract vowel plus a diphthong. The alpha and the first vowel of the diphthong are different, so they combine. And what combination do you think is that going to be? It's the flex rule again. Huh, right? Omicron's a strong vowel. Pretty much any combination of omicron or omega with anything else is going to be omega. So that's going to combine to be an omega, and then the upsilon as the second vowel will drop off. So the combined form is agaposin, right? Agaposin. So it's just I am loving, you are loving, he is loving, we are loving, y'all are loving, they are loving, right? These are the exact same forms, just proving it to you up here, the exact same forms that we have up above. We just built them piece by piece. Okay, we're also going to illustrate, finally, combinations with the omicron, and we'll see how these rules explain that as well. Combinations with the omicron, we'll do this with the verb plairao. Means I fulfill, right? This is a verb that's used often speaking about the fulfillment of Scripture in Matthew. Thus what was fulfilled, what was written through the prophet, right? That motif that we find in the Gospel of Matthew. So the stem is plaira, right? Ending with the omicron contract vowel. So we can write down our 6 forms of the verb here. The present, active, indicative, preparing to build that. Plaira. Some of you want to pay to have some handwriting classes for me. Yes, it might be useful. Plaira. Although if you look at some ancient scribal handwriting, some of it's actually terrible, and so maybe that makes me feel better to see that. First, second, third person singular, first, second, third person plural. Then we just have our regular endings, right? Because remember, with contract verbs, it's not that the endings are different, it's that they're combining, and then they look weird after they combine. Okay, remember, all the way down through here, this is an omicron contract verb. And then let's look at what it's combining with. It's combining with an omega, right? Remember our flex rule? Huh, have my arms down in front of me, my fists together, or flexing like with my arms up in the air, my big biceps there. Pretty much any combination of omicron or omega, unless it's otherwise specified, is going to be omega. Huh, showing my biceps there. Right? So it's play row, right? Notice again how we have to make this a tad bit neater, don't we? Notice how the circumflex marks the combination where the combination has taken place there. So play row, I am fulfilling. Okay, on the second form, we have the omicron contract vowel plus the diphthong A. And this is that rule about on the show, 8 is enough, oily kids, right? On the show, 8 is enough, oily kids. So this is going to be play Royce, right? And that students are frustrated with that because that doesn't look like a verbal form they've learned. They think it looks like a dative noun. They're like, oh, it looks like a noun. Well, it's not, right? It's a contract verb. And it's the spelling's a little wonky now, right? So play row, I am fulfilling. Play Royce, you are fulfilling. The third form here, we have the omicron contract vowel plus the a diphthong. Again, on the show, 8 is enough, oily kids. And that is going to be excuse me here, that's going to be play Roy, pardon me, sticking an extra sigma on there, play Roy. Doesn't that look a little odd? Yeah, I am fulfilling, you are fulfilling, he is fulfilling, right? Look up above here. We're going to show you how this. Yeah, I am fulfilling, you are fulfilling, he is fulfilling. Those are the actual forms there. These rules explain the way that they combine. All right, these rules explain the way that they combine. Let's keep going here. So we have the omicron contract vowel plus the omicron at the beginning of the end. That's a single vowel plus a single vowel. That's like two bubble guys running together. Ooh, bam, they hit the ground, right? Play rumen, right? Play rumen. We are fulfilling. Here we have the omicron plus the epsilon. That's a bubble guy plus a dinosaur running together. Ooh, so that's play ruta, right? Play ruta. Y'all are fulfilling. Here we have an omicron plus the diphthong oo, and the contract vowel and the first vowel of the diphthong are the same, so one of them drops off, and then we're left with oo, so that ends up being oosin. Play rusin, right? So that's just we are fulfilling, y'all are fulfilling, they are fulfilling, and just want to prove it to you. Here it is up here in the chart, the same form. So we saw how these 7 rules will explain all these different combinations. There's one other thing in the chapter that you're required to learn. This is a memory paradigm you should memorize and be able to reproduce. The contract verbs, you need to recognize those. But when it comes to being able to reproduce a paradigm, you really should be able to do this. This is the imperfect active of the verb a me. Right? You already know the present, a me, a esten, esmen, esta, asen. And now this is the imperfect. There are basically three paradigms of a me and the indicative you need to learn. You need to learn the present tense, you need to learn the imperfect tense, and eventually we'll learn the future. So this is just translated I was, you were, he was, we were, you guys were, they were. I'll just pronounce it amen, ace, ain, amen, eta, ason. And there's a wonderful little song that was written by Jackson Van Dyke we're going to provide for you to help you learn those. Again, amen, ace, ain, amen, eta, ason.